Rina, meantime, Trump's out there in Georgia mocking the president's stutter. Why go there? Does he think that helps his campaign in some way?
Well, we're just off of a really intense week. I would submit to you one of the most intense weeks we'll see in this entire election cycle. So here we sit less than a week out from the pivotal Super Tuesday results, as well as the State of the Union. And you have to wonder, what is the playbook for Republicans? Because for both candidates now, whether it's Biden or Trump, the name of the game will be, especially for Biden, will be to drive the momentum forward every week from here on out until November. And then you look at how the Republicans have gamed this thing out. Just looking at Thursday night, the State of the Union, they are relying entirely on immigration and border issues and tying that to crime and public safety. That's all they've got right now. So Donald Trump going for really awful insults that I think any parent, any person with a stutter looks at and says that is absolutely abhorrent. It's a moment in which you know that they've got nothing more, because when you looked at the Congress, you see, again, within the past 10 days, you've seen endorsements of Haley by Collins, Murkowski, two senators. Senator Todd Young has come out and doubled down on his comments, saying he won't endorse Trump, saying he has a disastrous down ballot effect. So I think, again, this is a moment, and you will get the daily question, where do the Haley voters go from here? And more of this they'll see from Donald Trump, the less they'll want to turn out and click for him.
Adrienne, at that Trump event in Georgia, we know the former president met with the parents of Laken Riley, the Georgia nursing student who was allegedly killed by an undocumented immigrant. President Biden addressed this story, as we all remember, in the State of the Union, and he referred to the suspect as a, quote, illegal, a term he tells MSNBC's Jonathan Capehart he now regrets.
And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
Adrienne, the right is now seizing on President Biden, walking it back. Do you think the president handled this the right way?
I certainly did. I mean, look, he obviously said he regretted using the word, and he showed contrition when he talked to Jonathan Capehart, which I think is certainly something that Americans love. They love it when somebody feels that they said something they shouldn't have said and they apologize for it. That is certainly something we never see from Donald Trump. And again, I think there's something very similar to what Rina was just saying. If you're actually trying to appeal to swing voters, to independent voters, to voters that are maybe still deciding how they're going to vote in this upcoming election, you know, using divisive rhetoric, using hateful rhetoric like Donald Trump does when he describes immigrants, when he describes, you know, plenty of people in this country, pretty much everybody except for white men, it is not something that appeals to that sector of voters. You have somebody like President Biden who shows compassion, who has a very forward-looking agenda, who talks very positively in a very aspirational tone about the United States. You compare that to Donald Trump, who's trying to use fear and rhetoric to drive his voters out. It's something that just, again, it's going to deliver red meat to Trump's base, but it's certainly not going to do anything to corral some of those voters that Trump absolutely needs to win this election.
Garrett, we're seeing a little cleanup from Republican Senator Katie Britt, who delivered the GOP response to the State of the Union. Can you walk us through what's happened?
A little cleanup, but there's not much what you can do when you get caught in a mess like Katie Britt finds herself in now. Remember, during the State of the Union, she told a story about a woman she said had told her story about having been sex trafficked as a teenager. The implication viewers were left with was that this was somehow linked to Joe Biden's border policies, or that certainly this happened in the United States. Well, upon further inspection, neither of those things turns out to be true. The woman in question was sex trafficked in Mexico, and she says, and has said in several interviews, that the incident occurred during the George W. Bush administration. Britt was pressed about this over the weekend. Here's how she tried to clean it up.
But to be clear, the story that you relayed is not something that's happened under the Biden administration, that particular person.
Well, I very clearly said I spoke to a woman who told me about when she was trafficked when she was 12. So I didn't say a teenager. I didn't say a young woman, a grown woman, a woman when she was trafficked when she was 12.
Some rhetorical gymnastics there in the cleanup, Anna, with, of course, a much smaller audience than who would have saw her make those claims without much, in fact, any supporting evidence in her State of the Union response.
Right, and it was one of the most memorable, most haunting parts of her State of the Union response. Rina, did Senator Britt mishandle this?
We can talk all day long about how she used what is being referred to as a fundy baby voice and how she needs media training. All of that is there too. But the thing that stuck out to me the most was that she didn't use any data points. And so, of course, storytelling is the core of what all of us political communicators have told our clients to do over the years. In speech writing, it was central to me. But I think now what she needed to do in that response and what she really fell flat on doing was to speak about how Trump can make everybody's lives better versus Joe Biden. He gave some strong data points in that State of the Union that cannot be contested. And what she followed with was just absolutely it felt like nonsense at moments. And I don't think it appealed to anyone because it was confusing at times. And also at the end of the day, who was it intended to drive out? It was intended to get to the heart of the base. And that's just not the name of the game here. So Senator Britt has definitely lost rising star status here, which is sad for her because my husband and many people knew her in Alabama growing up and said this is somebody that kind of did everything right. But clearly what she's done now is prostrated at the altar of Donald Trump, and it has changed who she is. And sadly, I think will not end her career in the U.S. Senate, of course, but will keep her out of rooms in which she really could have opened the door to for herself.